incarnation clearly says it's the will of God that nobody would perish. Well, do people perish? So God doesn't get what he wants, isn't that right?
Mm-hmm.
He says what he wants is that nobody would.
Yeah.
But they do. So there are people who say, well, why didn't God just make everybody right? Could he do that?
He could, but he doesn't.
Why not?
Then it wouldn't be a choice.
It wouldn't be a choice, and also there may even be a legality involved because God alone is right. The Lord himself said only God is good. If he creates another who is good, then he'd literally creating a second God, wouldn't he? If he alone is good and he creates something else that's good, he's duplicating himself. And then how many gods would we have? It starts getting kind of a can of worms here. So he's saying, I'm not going to make another good one, but I will indwell you. So your righteousness is not a duplicate of the Lord. Your righteousness is the Lord himself. And of course, if the Lord moved into your house and he didn't like something in there, what would he do with it?
Renovate.
Get rid of it, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
And so he moves into us, you might say, and says, well, there's a lot of junk in here I don't like, so I'm going to have to get rid of it. Is he going to do it? Yeah, he will. And what do people say? I don't want you in my house ever. Stay out. Well, he's not a robber. He won't force himself on you, will he? You know, some guy once said the only difference between love and rape is a matter of consent. The Lord doesn't rape anybody. He will love you. You got your consent. So, you know, it's so clear when the Lord gives this, maybe it's just a parable and not a literal thing, I don't know, but the story about the rich man and Lazarus who died, you remember that one?
Yeah.
Well, what's the purpose of the story? Is he describing something that's not even real, or is he describing an actual situation? Could be, or
Yeah, some people say it's parable. Some people say he was just talking real.
well, it could be a parable, but parables aren't false things. They're a story that represents a real truth, aren't they?
And he never, yeah.
So whether it really was a real man called Lazarus talking about it, or a real rich man, it doesn't matter. The point is, this is a reality of something that happens. Of course, in the story, the rich man goes to this place called paradise, or Lazarus goes to a place called paradise. So did the rich man. They both went there. Now, paradise doesn't mean heaven. Another misinterpretation. Paradise is a word that means the realm of the dead, or where the dead go. So everybody dies, goes to paradise. But he said it was a two-chambered place, and there was a big canyon between the two parts. They're both in there. Who's the boss of the place?
The Lord, I'm sure.
No.
Abraham.
Abraham was. Well, who's Abraham? Is Abraham in charge of heaven? Is he in charge of hell? But he's in charge of paradise. It says that, doesn't it? The rich man, in fact, in the story, where did Lazarus end up?
Bosom of Abraham.
What does that mean?
No, sitting in his lap.
Well, who is Abraham anyway?
Father of the faithful.
The father of the faithful. His title is the father of faith. So Lazarus is resting in the presence of the father of faith. Where's God in this thing? Is he even mentioned? Jesus, he mentioned? Just Abraham. Abraham's the boss.
There.
All right. And there's Lazarus with Abraham. Is Lazarus doing okay?
Yeah. He's better than he was in life.
Quite. He was poor. Is he poor now?
No.
Is he suffering?
No.
Okay, so he's okay. Now the rich man's also there.
He's not doing so good.
But what's the difference? There's a separation, isn't there?
Yeah.
And so now the rich man can converse with Abraham. He calls out to him. Does Abraham hear him?
Yeah.
He says, Abraham, Father Abraham. Called him Father Abraham. Help me. What does Abraham say?
He said, I can't help you.
Sorry, I can't do anything for you. You're too far away. You're across the canyon from me. And then the rich man says, well, at least send somebody back, warn my brother not to come this way. Well, they got the prophets. They won't reject, they won't respect them. Why would they respect anybody else? There's no hope for them either. So where are his brother's going to end up?
Probably right there with him.
Same place, right? What's the purpose of the story? If you say we don't believe in that, then throw the story out. The Lord just making fairy tales here.
Well, point of the story is that there is a separation.
Yeah.
No. It's the same story. It's the sheep from the goats, and
the other thing about it,
the wheat from the chaff, the good from the weeds. You know, that's the story of the kingdom. Really, is
when the Lord died, it says he went to paradise. So where'd he go?
I'm sure he went to. Well,
where's paradise? Where Abraham was,
mm-hmm.
Where the rich man was, and where the poor man was. And it says he brought out those that were there, but not everybody. You know, when the literal man that we know of, named Lazarus, I don't know if it's the same guy or not, probably not. Mary and Martha's brother dies, and you know all that. Jesus gets there, goes over to the tomb, and it says he called out in a loud voice. What?
So people around him could hear.
What'd he call? What was the word?
Lazarus come out.
Yeah. Why didn't he just say, come out?
So everybody wouldn't come out.
Jesus looked into paradise and said, come out. Who would come out?
Everybody.
Everybody who had ever died from Adam on. He said, I only want one of you. I want Lazarus. Well, what about, was the rich man there? Says he was in the parable. He didn't come out.
He wasn't called.
How about Abraham? How come Abraham didn't come out?
Wasn't asked to.
Wasn't called. But are you worried about Abraham? He's okay. So the Lord says there will come a time when the graves will be opened. It's like paradise will release whoever's in it. That's what it says in prophecy. And who will come out?
Everybody.
Everybody. But he says some will come out
to life.
To life, and some will come out for everlasting judgment. It does say that, doesn't it? So paradise gets emptied. Now there's another place that says, the apostle wrote, if a man died, if you die, you're instantly in the presence of the Lord. You're not with Abraham in paradise. If you die today or tomorrow, you're not going to paradise. Why not?
That's what it says.
The Lord emptied his people out of there. But he does have a place where he said, certain of the people raised and others did not raise until there was a time coming. In other words, what about the part of paradise where the rich guy was? That hasn't been let loose yet. Mm-hmm. So at this point in time, the Lord's people do not go to paradise. They go directly into, by the way, they don't go to heaven either. Not in the sense that people think of the general, you ask any Christian, what's heaven? Well, it's this wonderful city. What's the streets of heaven paved with?
Gold.
Not true. It doesn't say one word about the streets of heaven being paved with gold. Where do they get that?
Revelation.
It says there is a place where streets are paved with gold. What's the name of the place?
I don't recall.
New Jerusalem.
Oh, yeah.
And where is it?
In the heavens.
No. It says it came down out of heaven to the earth. And when he saw it, it was sitting on the ground. He said, streets of heaven, streets of New Jerusalem, paved with gold. And also there's no temple there. Why not?
Because the temple was just a foreshadowing of what the real reality
is.
Is.
The Lord, the temple, the place. They don't need a temple.
That's kind of like Ezekiel too, isn't it?
Well, Ezekiel describes the detail of the temple.
The end of the temple, but the whole point was the Lord's there.
Yes. And the name of at the end of Ezekiel, the Lord is there. And in Revelation said there's no need for him because the Lord is there. So Ezekiel gives this marvelous, takes 10 chapters just to tell you about how it's made.
Yeah.
And all he's trying to do it in a figurative form. He said, this is who the Lord is. All this detail and everything. Every little thing is taken care of. And in the end, the Lord's there. So he's not talking about an earthly temple at all. He's talking about a picture of the Lord. What does the Lord look like? You know, we can't even. We have all kinds of Renaissance paintings that tell us what the Lord looks like. They don't know. They may know what the physical form of the Lord. In fact, he says he took on himself a form like sinful man. So look at any sinful man, there's a picture of what the Lord looked like. But he said that was a form he took on. It's like if you went to a Halloween party and you wanted to look like Darth Vader, you can put on a Darth Vader costume, and when you walk in the door, they'll say, hey, look, here comes Darth Vader. Not really, it's just you, but you've put on that form. So if say, well, what does Brett look like? Well, he don't look like Darth Vader at all, unless he puts on the costume. So the Lord put on a costume so that we could visualize. Otherwise, what does he look like? Nobody knows. So anyway, it says when he went into paradise, it says he brought out those who were held captive. It says that Apostle Paul wrote that. And it says he led captivity captive. So they became his people. They came out, and he also put an end to the grip that death had on them, you know. So remember, there's a proverb that says the proverb is fulfilled. The grave has lost its victory and death has lost its sting. So people go into a grave, but if something has, it's not a place you go to. It's a condition of being in the presence of the Lord. And right now in our physical form, we can't even comprehend it. But there will come a time when we'll get above this level and then we'll get it. So it's a very real thing. But as we said, we begin we're really in the presence of the Lord now. It's just that because of the limits of physical things, our experience of it is really small. But it's just like when your little daughter Zoe's in your presence, she knows she's there, but she don't know very much about you, a little bit. You could tell her all the history of when you were in Ukraine and everything. You think she's going to understand all that? But the day will come when she's 25 years old, and you can sit down and tell her everything you want her to know. Right now, you talk a little, talk to her. So here we are. The Lord's presence is very real, but our understanding is just trivial. But we were discussing the reality of this hell thing. By the way, the word hell is if I understand correctly, is a Greek word translated from the word Sheol in Hebrew, which means the grave, or wherever the dead go. So it's another way of describing paradise. It's just where the dead are. Just because you're in the grave doesn't mean you're condemned. It all depends on things. But if you're not going to be with Abraham, the father of faith, what's left? And
unfaith.
yeah, so And Abraham didn't say to the rich man, look, I can't do anything for you right now, but when the Lord comes, he'll bring you out. Does he say anything like that? He leaves him with, there's nothing I can do for you. And he's the father of faith. What can faith do for that guy? So, pretty hopeless sounding, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the Lord talks about a place called the lake of fire.
Yeah.
And almost invariably in the Old Testament, fire always represents judgment.
Yeah.
Because what fire does, it reduces everything to its basic elements, doesn't it?
Carbon.
Yeah, just whatever it was, fire makes it back to just the atomic elements.
Mm-hmm.
So if this thing burns, it looks like a table now. When it's burned, it'll just be carbon or whatever it's made out of. And so the lake of fire is, and I've told you many times that Hebrew speaks in very concrete terms that we can visualize something. So we could picture, there was a place outside of Jerusalem where they burned the garbage. And so when they took trash out and threw it in that fire, and it says it burned all the time, continuous burning. Every time they take anything out, it never stopped. So he pictures that. That's what that's like. And whatever you threw in that fire, you'll never see it again. It's gone. And so he said this concept that's called the lake of fire is like the Lord just throwing the trash away. It never comes back. Nothing's ever recovered out of it. And it burned, he says it burned forever and ever. So anybody that says that doesn't exist anymore, I think they just really have to leave a lot of stuff out, wouldn't they, to say that. And the Lord doesn't say it just to play games. He said, if there's one thing God does not want, is he doesn't want anyone to ever be in that. But he doesn't force himself on the people if they want. That's what they're going to get. In Deuteronomy, I think it says, our God is a consuming fire. Mm-hmm. What does he consume?
Whatever he touches, I guess,
When something's consumed, it's done for, everything. Mm-hmm. And you can't rescue something that's been consumed, can you? Mm-hmm. So that's part of the basic gospel. It's in the first word, Bereshit. Our God. The letter Shin represents El Shaddai, the all-consuming God. And it's a warning to those people. You don't want to know God in that sense. Because, not by experience anyway. And it comes a real warning. The purpose of every warning, is never a threat. If you see a sign that says sharp curve ahead, slow, it's not a threat. What's the purpose of it?
It's a warning.
And what's the purpose of warning?
Keep you safe.
It's to protect you, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So the purpose of warning is not to threaten you, it's to save you. So when he says there is a thing called the lake of fire, that's not a threat, but it is a warning for the purpose of saving you from that. Well, what if you won't listen to the warning?
Get consumed.
Sharp curve ahead, you don't want to slow down? Well, look out for trouble,
There's a sub-segment of people, I wouldn't call them religious at all, but when they encounter some of the ideas of God, they tend to be philosophical for about this long until they get a reason not to believe. But one of the things that such a person would say would be, if they would frame it something like this: well, you're saying that God has this system that he saves these people but rejects these people, right? Well, I don't really want to. I don't think that's good. I don't think that's kind. So why would I want to follow a God like that? What would you say to them?
Well, you know, when the Apostle Paul spoke to the people at Athens, Mars Hill, remember he said,
He complimented them.
what?
He complimented them.
He said, I've been looking around your place. He said, I see you're really a religious people. And wow, you've got all these, there was over 10,000 different shrines to different gods. And he said, I've looked at all your shrines, and I see you even had one addressed to the unknown God. Well, how many unknown gods are there?
None.
Oh, yes, there is. There's one.
Talking about
There's only
God
one
himself.
that's not known. All the others know him because they made them themselves.
Okay, I see.
They
what
know
you
them
mean.
all. But there's one they don't know. He said, I want to tell you about that one unknown God. Because there's only one. And he says, up until now, God looked on yourself and he winked at what you were doing. What does that mean, he winked at it?
I think what the King James says passed over.
Yeah, like,
Don't worry about
I'll
it.
let that go.
Yeah.
But now he says, all right, not winking, now he's calling you to account. So you got to make a decision now. Up until now, you let that slide, passed over, winked at it. It's no big thing. But now he's calling you to account. Well, nobody had ever said that to them before, had they, do you think? So the Lord sent the apostle to tell those guys, it's time for you to get to know who the one is. What if you don't? He won't be winking at it anymore. You're gonna have to give account if you won't. This is your chance to make a right decision. Some of them did. Remember, some of them said, we want to hear more about this.
Yeah.
But they ended up getting thrown out. They didn't, generally they didn't accept it.
Some of them accepted. Some of them said, we'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
Some of them said, psh, whatever.
So there were decisions made. weren't there?
And those are pretty much the three decisions you can give God.
Exactly.
Later, no, or...
Remember, the other that you just mentioned later. Remember the king who said some more convenient time?
Yeah.
Remember that one? And when he said that, was he in danger of saying that?
He's susceptible to the passage of time.
You don't push God away. I mean, if he comes to you, it says this is the more Old Testament stuff. Seek him while he may be found.
And he did have a tendency of disappearing on him.
Well, call on him while he's near. That's Old Testament, by the way. Can't quote that to people who don't believe in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Call on him while he's near. Well, what if you don't call him while he's near?
Liable to be gone.
So if there's no judgment, then why is he wasting all his words? Why put up a sign that says warning, sharp curve ahead, if there's no sharp curve? If that were true, then God's lying to the whole world, warning them of a danger to come, only there's really no danger. That's not true. There is a danger there, and people want to reject it. It's a tough deal, but they're going to learn. So I'm a firm believer in the judgment of God.
Yeah.
And that it's eternal. It is not I'm not a universalist by any means.
Well, one thing about one thing about just judgment and justice.
Yeah.
One thing about judgment is justice because, so many bad things in the world. I mean, people who capture children and send them into pornography or prostitution. There's some kind of appeal that even worldly people have that, some people just need to pay for what they're doing, And I don't care who you are, but there's there's people that just need to pay for what they did.
Well, the Lord said, you offend me little, you'd be better off if you just tied a stone around your neck, gave you off in the drink,
Yeah.
As though that would be better for you.
Yeah.
Well, if that would be better, what are you really going to get? It'd be easier on you if they just did that.
Yeah.
He's telling you, there'll be something worse than that.
Yeah.
Well, what's worse than having a stone thrown in a drink? He said, what'll happen to you is worse than that. So it's just another way of saying, you better not do this, because there is a lake of fire. And again, I think that's figurative, because it's just a way of saying God's judgment, and God is just. And that's a term that, the world uses the word justice. By the way, the world uses every word that's in the Bible. They never get one definition. They do not know what justice means. What does justice mean?
That which is right.
What if it's just a little bit wrong?
It's not justice.
Justice is absolutely there. There can't be truth. If truth goes down a straight line, what if you're just a little bit away?
If you get 1,000 miles down the road, it's a long way away.
And what difference does it make? If you're not on that straight line, then you're not in truth. Very absolute. Well, God is just. And what if God said, well, they're pretty close. I'll let them go on that one. Now, the Pharisees would say, well then, remember the disciples said to Jesus when about the rich man, well then who can be saved? What they mean by saying that, who could be saved?
It must be impossible.
None of us are that perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But the Lord added some when they said that. With man, there is no hope, but with God, all things are possible. So, are you righteous?
Absolutely.
Absolutely wonderful. I'm glad to hear you say that. How righteous are you?
All the way.
Are you as good as God is?
Yep.
How can you be as good as God?
Well, he's attributed it to me.
Because he has put his righteousness. It's not your right. Now we realize we're still living in a body that has the nature of old man Adam in it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's only a temporary. We said we're just a blink in the time.
This body's going to the death anyway.
Yep. And the Lord says he's going to restore the body to a newness that will not have that old Adamic nature in it. So, but the inward man remember I said, you don't have a soul. You are a soul that has a body.
Mm-hmm.
How about the soul? How's it doing?
It's still here.
Been redeemed.
Yeah.
And it's righteous. And that's why, the old saying, it takes two to tango. Have you ever had a thought or done something when you got a little inward battle going on? I really shouldn't be doing this. And you feel bad about it. Why do you feel bad about it?
Because the righteousness brewing in me.
Because the righteousness that you are hates what's going on. The apostle said, I see myself doing that, and I'm just grieved by it. It just wrings me out.
It's like Ephesians 4, too. Of course, this kind of gets back to our raisings about the ability to fall away. I don't know. What do you think about the ability to fall away? See, because Ephesians 4 was talking about people whose hearts had become hard. And, they started out by disobeying a little bit, by fudging off the line. But then it got to where their hearts were calloused. And
another place says, if you've partaken of the Spirit, you've tasted of the Lord, and you fall away, there's no salvation. You read that.
Mm-hmm.
You take your truck into a welding shop because the back bumper's busted on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get the welder to weld it up for you. He says, if that won't hold, nothing will. Is he telling you it's liable to break?
He's saying it's liable not to break. It's not going to break.
You don't need to worry about it.
Guaranteed.
That is guaranteed. The Lord said, if I've rescued you and you fall away, well, then there's no salvation. If there's no salvation because you fell away, what about that other guy? What about the other guy past him? What about me? What about everybody? If one guy could fall away from what the Lord has rescued, there is no salvation. What's he saying?
Lord guarantees his word.
Guarantees it, yes. And he said, remember he said he quoted two quotes. One was, the sow that was washed is going back to the mire. So you bring a sow in. Now you got a big old fat pig and you bring it in and you wash it all up. Get her spotless clean, put some perfume on it and a pink bow tie around her neck. Now you got a beautiful clean pig.
Yep.
You let go of the pig, what happens?
It goes straight back to the mud.
Tells you one thing. It never was nothing but a pig. He said the dog was returned to his vomit.
Still a dog.
So you train your dog. We don't do that. You let go of your dog, go back. Tells you one thing. He never was nothing but a dog. So what happened? What kind of salvation did he ever really have? It was just outward. It looked pretty good.
Lipstick on a pig.
So he's saying that's what that definition is. If you fall away, you're just a pig that was washed. It looked good on the surface, but you never were nothing but a pig. So when the Lord said to Nicodemus, you're born again, or you got to be, he didn't mean you got to polish up your Phariseeism, make it look better. He said you got to be changed. And if you're changed, who changes you anyway?
Got to be God.
And if he changes you, you're not what you used to be. You're not a washed pig. Pharisees are washed pigs. They look good. Let them go, they go right back to whatever they were. So the man who's born again is no longer a pig. See? And so the Lord says, if that don't hold, there isn't any salvation. And if there isn't any salvation, who loses?
It's us who lost.
He said, if this doesn't do it, Christ died for nothing. So who loses? The Lord died. He's the one who loses. So if you fell away, God is the loser. You going to accept that?
No.
He's not the loser. He did not die in vain. And when you were, your salvation is not because you believed anything. Your salvation is not because you joined something or did anything or because you were baptized. Your salvation is because you were put through the death and burial and resurrection of the Lord. That's not figurative, it's very real. And it's a one-way street. When they came through the Red Sea, remember, they even said, let's kill Moses and Joshua and go back. We're better off in Egypt. Did they go back? Why not?
So water's closed.
There's no way. They can't go back.
To get back. Yeah.
The Lord says, I brought you out, you're not going back. But that doesn't mean their troubles are over or that everything's all right with them. They got a lot of lessons to learn, but they're not going back there, even though they wanted to. They threatened to kill Moses and Joshua. And so the Lord says, see, that you can put that in there for a picture. You can't fall away. I used to think you could. I spent years. In fact, people say, if you don't, you believe in that eternal security thing. Like that's some kind of a crime. I'm not going to realize it. I'd ask somebody who believes that. Well, how about you? Are you saved?
Well, I'm trying.
The Lord says, yeah, He gives you everlasting. How long does everlasting life last?
Well, forever.
Well, if you're going to lose it, it's not everlasting, is it? Yeah. So, your everlasting life is really kind of fragile, and you're liable to. How many sins do you have to do to lose it anyway? 10,000, 1,000, 100?
Well, the way me and you grew up was it only takes one.
Well,
One
then,
unrepentant.
you ever done it? Well, then, I got very bad news for
It
you.
can be done. I've done it.
Yeah, I got some terrible news for you, mister. You've lost it. And I remember we used to pray, and we'd pray, Lord, forgive me for this. And then, in case I've forgotten something, just forgive me for that too. Cover all the bases.
I can't believe that was Methodism, because it was the same way in the Church of Christ.
we never had any peace.
Yeah, it's not. It's not. How can it be good news?
Yeah, we were always afraid because maybe I've done the unpardonable sin.
Yeah.
And so what good is security? What good is salvation? It's
not really security if it's not secure.
The most dangerous thing you can do is get salvation, because you're liable to lose it any time. But what's the good news?
and another angle of it is, like, say you're in Sunday school, and the teacher says, how many of you would know that your salvation is secure if you were to die right now? And you got people that are like, oh, yeah. And,
you know why they think that way? They don't know what salvation is. I don't mean to say they don't have it. They don't know what. Clearly, that we are put into that death. It's not a death instead of us. It's Him taking us into death, through which we have resurrection. And it's just like it's taught so clearly. And when Israel came out of Egypt, came to the Red Sea, and Moses the leader, they all went through, had to go through. Moses did not go through vicariously for them. He led them through it, and they had to. What if any of them had said, "Well, Moses, you go through for us in our place"? Would that work? They'd leave them standing there, and Pharaoh would have caught up with them very quickly. So the Lord says, no, that's not the way it is. And so I told those folks, that's not true. They changed it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I'm surprised I didn't believe me enough to take it out. Did away with that one. So I don't teach that. And the trouble with that is it weakens it so badly that you don't know for sure, well, has it really? What do I have to show that it was for me? Other than it just says it was. And one of the things that gave me the freedom to finally let go of this possibility I might lose my hope is I really had come to that. Because it clearly teaches in the Exodus study that the ancients really decided they were going to go back to Egypt. Let's kill Moses and go back. Better back. They couldn't do it. Why not? Because there's no way back through the Red Sea. And just like we can't go, if we were to lose our salvation, it would be we'd have to go back through the death. It's not provided. There is no way back through it. And it says clearly, in that Christ died once, He's resurrected, He can never die again. In the same breath, He says, you count that you also are dead to sin and alive to God, just as He is. So your resurrection is just as real as His. Well, if He can't go back through it, can you go back? So, and then there's some explanation in other places. James wrote, I think, that, and we talk about this, the pig that was washed has gone back to the mire. It just shows they look good, but it never was anything but a pig. So there was no salvation. So somebody that's gone back, it just tells you one thing. Well, they were a washed pig, but they're still pig. But you're not a washed pig. You're a resurrected Son of God is who you are, That's a big difference. And anyway, when I began to see that, then I realized I have security. I can be safe. And I lost the fear. We used to, we'd have
that's
these.
so important. I've been there too, and there was a moment in my life, and it wasn't very long ago, but I think I said it Sunday. There's things that string you along for a while, and then you're like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
and I did that with, I believe, security.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember exactly when it was, even though some people say, well, if you don't know exactly when it was, but I know. There was a time, Jim, where I feel like the message on my heart was, you are safe.
Yeah.
And not so much, see, I don't like the word safety. I don't really even like the word saved, but even though it's biblical and it's good, but it's kind of overused and abused.
That's true.
But God's. I belong to God. And that was the overwhelming message. And, well, what if I get caught up in pornography? What if I, screw up my family? I'm still going to be God's. And I knew that. And it wasn't about my behavior or my, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
Because I'm bound to be striving.
It's just like
God,
your daughters. They belong to you.
Yeah.
What could they do that would make them no longer belong to you?
Not one thing.
What if they told you one day, we're sick of you, we're leaving, I don't ever see you again? Who are they?
They're my daughters.
Yeah, and they're in a bad way.
Yeah.
But nothing can change who they are.
Right.
And of course, now, from a human point, maybe there's nothing you could do about it. But if you play that game with God, can the Lord's people ever say to God, I'm sick of you, I'm going the other way?
Yeah.
You can say that.
Say it.
And then what will God do?
He'll remain God, remain faithful.
And he'll say, okay, I gotta work on you, don't I?
Mm-hmm.
And the story is so clearly brought out in the prodigal son story. Here's a guy, isn't that what he did? He said to his father, I'm sick of everything around here, I want out of this, give me my money, I'm gone, and I'm not coming back.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Fooey on you.
who was he? He was that man's son, wasn't he?
Yep.
And did that man ever at one point say, well, I'm going to have to let him go, he's done, he's not my son anymore? In fact, it says the man went out every day and looked for the son to come back. And notice, though, he never went out looking for him. He just went out to the gate and looked down the road to see if he was coming.
Mm-hmm.
But he longed for that son to come back. And when the son came back, the son had practiced his speech all the way home of what I'm going to say when I get there.
Mm-hmm.
And the father wouldn't even let him say it. He said, I don't want to hear about that. You're my son, and we're going to party. And, we used to be taught that if we'd committed some sin and we didn't ask forgiveness for it, that we'd be condemned.
Right.
Well,
Us too.
Do you know that all the sin of the world has already been forgiven? All the sin is forgiven. Forgiveness is not how you're saved. Forgiveness is what God's attitude toward you is. And forgiveness, if I forgive you, or if you forgive me for something, then you're saying I will not hold a personal grudge against you. But the law can never forgive. Ever.
Kind of like you were saying yesterday from Romans 8.
Yeah.
The law cannot make you right.
It can't make. It can only point out here's what you are.
Mm-hmm.
But it says what the law could not do. It can't forgive you. It can't make you right. But Christ has done it. And so, and isn't it true that the Lord said to send some form, whatever the Son asks of the Father, He will give Him? All right, so from the cross, He looks at the soldiers who just did the most horrible thing you could do to anybody, and all they were doing was the dirty work for everybody else.
Yeah.
And He says, Father, forgive them. So what does the Father do?
That's what He does.
Forgives them.
Mm-hmm.
Who does He forgive? Her? Just those 5 soldiers? They were doing the work for us.
Mm-hmm.
He forgives everybody. And that doesn't mean everybody's saved. It just means that God does not hold a personal grudge against everybody. Although, if God held a personal grudge against people, then who would have any hope?
That's what the psalmist said.
But he says, I don't hold a grudge. I love you. I want to help you. Now, forgiveness doesn't mean you're saved. It just means that you are now in a position where God is willing and ready to do something for you. Otherwise, there'd be no hope for anybody. So, what if you, well, then why does he say in the prayer, forgive us? Why does he say in the Lord's Prayer that we should ask for forgiveness if he's already done it? Doesn't it say in the Lord's Prayer, forgive us?
Forgive us, yeah.
Why ask for something you've already got?
Because it takes you through the process. Get you involved a little bit. Yeah. Put some skin in the game.
And sometimes it may be the way the translation reads. It might be better to say, we forgive others because you have forgiven us. Mm-hmm. And not so much ask him to forgive us, but because you have forgiven us, therefore I need to forgive the next guy. Just like he says, lead us not into temptation. Well, when has God ever led anyone into temptation? Why would you ask him to not do something that he never does? What he should be saying is, you're not the one who leads me into temptation. You're the one who rescues me from temptation. That's what it says. So I think the translation is wrong in English. It would make no sense to ask God to not lead us into temptation.
Right. Even James said that.
Sure. God doesn't tempt anybody. He can't be tempted. In fact, you know, they talk about Jesus going into the wilderness to be tempted by Satan. The English says that. Mm-hmm. It should say he went there to be tested by Satan. And you can test God, but you can't tempt him. James says clearly, a man's tempted when he's drawn away of his own lust. How much lust does God have? How can you tempt God? He has no lust. So, you can test him, and he even says, test me, try me. Mm-hmm. See if I'm true. So, that you can do, but you can't tempt him. So, Jesus was never tempted. In fact, I told this to a preacher. He didn't like it. He raised his eyebrows. I said, Jesus never used any willpower at all. What do you think of that?
Well, because he was using God's will power.
The only will around here is the will of my Father. Yeah. I'm a servant. A servant has no will. A servant does what he's told. The minute he does anything of his own will, he stops being a servant. So when Jesus was in the garden and prayed, not my will but yours, it doesn't mean I have a different will than you. It says, we're not operating on my will. I'm here to serve you. And even though I'm in desperate trouble and I need your help, don't do it because I'm still your servant, and I don't need to tell you what to do. You just do what needs to be done. So this cup away from me, I don't want to do it. Mm-hmm. No, that's came right from Satan. Simply, when he said, take this cup away from me, he said, they're here in this garden right now trying to keep me from going across. If you don't rescue me from this, I will not be able to do what you said to me, because they got me down. In Psalm, I think it's 40 or 41, he says, innumerable evils have surrounded me, and now that he is down, they say, he will not get up again. And you can see Jesus on his face in the garden, and the satanic powers all around him saying, we got him now, he will not get up. And if he can't get up, there will be no redemption. And so Jesus screams out, help me, come quickly to my aid. And the angels did come. And where did the demons go? The angels drove them away somehow. And then in Psalms it says, raise me up. And in the English, again, it twists it down. It says, raise me up so that I may repay them. Not the right answer. It It should say, raise me up so that I may answer them. So here comes, he said, my own familiar friend who ate my bread with me lifted up his heel against me. Who's he talking about? Here comes Judas leading the soldiers. He says, I got to answer these guys, and I'm down on the ground, bleeding, sweat drops of blood. I'm in no position to answer anybody. So the Lord rescues and gets him back on his feet. Here comes the soldiers, and they say, he asked, who are you looking for? Well, we're looking for this Jesus. Well, I'm him. And the minute he says, I am, what happens?
Drop that.
They all fall flat on their face or on their back, you know. And if
soldiers.
Yeah, big, powerful Roman soldiers. And if he said, I am, and they fell flat on their back, how would they be able to get back up on their feet? He'd have to release them. He would have to release them. So who's in charge of the whole thing? And he says, I'm not doing my will. This is the will of the Father. And so when he told Pontius Pilate, remember Pontius Pilate said, don't you know I got power? The only power on it is my Father's power. You don't have any power. And as soon as he's through with you, you'll go right down. So not through when I'm through with you. So as he said, my kingdom's not of this world. If it was, my soldiers would fight, but I'm not operating here as a king. He is a king, but in this position, I'm not operating as a king. I'm a servant now.
It's kind of like when he was talking to the apostles and they were trying to beg him to stay. And he was like, you don't know what's coming, and it's going to be better that I go.
Yep.
So his position of, well, he's in a position of reigning now.
Yes.
And before, he was just a human body, and it's better for us to have a reigning Lord in that realm than it is.
A lot of people thought that.
Body.
Yeah, a lot of people try to divide God up, saying, well, he's going to go away and another one will come. He does say in our translation, I will send another comforter. But we got one God, but he takes different positions. And as the sacrifice, he takes this human form. It says he put on him the form of a human man. He is not a descendant of Adam, but he took on the form of Adam, like putting on Adam's costume. He looks like Adam. But he said, in this form, I'll go away. And then the Spirit, in the form of the Spirit, he'll come, which is unlimited by all the human stuff and can function all over the place. So if he stayed in the human form he's in, and here we are 11,000 miles from Jerusalem, we'd have never seen him. We wouldn't know anything about him. So he puts himself in a form that reaches out to everywhere. And all this kind of thing that I began to see some of those things a long time ago, and all of a sudden it starts to make some sense. It's a slow process. Well, let's call it a day. I will see you at about noonish.
All right.
You'll be over there at the official church building.
That's right.
Okay.
The sanctuary.
All right. Later.
Coming on. Amen.
All right.
Bye.
Have a good evening.
You too, brother. Hey, baby, it's me.
Hello, sweetie pie.
Huh? Yeah, it is. Got Jim on the recorder again. Hey, sweetie pie. What you up to, buddy?